Superman has been one of those icons to stand the test of time. He has had many adaptations in movies, shows, and not all of them are great. Right now, he seems to have more dark parodies than anything else, and has had more than a few low points in his own history. That's why today I wanted to look at the two adaptations of this icon that came about at the character's lowest points, and renewed interests in The Last Son of Krypton. That being the animated series from '96, and the newest one, My Adventures from Superman from 2023. I want to compare and contrast them to see how they brought a beloved character back and modernized it perfectly for a new generation to enjoy. Since My Adventures with Superman only has one season out as of writing this, I'm only going to focus on the '90s series first season as well. Let's start with the production and time periods they were made in for some context. In the '90s, the comic book industry may as well have been on fire, with most stories relying on violence, cynicism, and ever-increasing dramatic events that torture said characters for clickbait to try to save them from poor sales. It was the time of characters like Venom, Lethal Protector, The Authority, and Lobo, with many older characters finding it hard to stay relevant. Heck, DC even killed Superman because his comics weren't selling like they used to, and they thought the character had been taken for granted. However, there were signs of pushback from the gritty, ultra-violent system of the '90s, with comics like Maximum Carnage and Kingdom Come. What really helped was superheroes being reintroduced to new audiences through other media, such as animated shows like the '90s X-Men, Spider-Man, Batman the Animated Series, and films like Blade and Tim Burton's Batman films, which were all targeted to a new generation and in some ways getting the characters back to their roots. Originally, Superman the Animated Series, which is what the '90s series was labeled as for years, was made to hype up or go along with a Superman film that was never finished. Gene McCurdy had asked Bruce Timm, the guy behind Batman the Animated Series, to develop it, and he brought experienced writers like Alan Burnett and Paul Dini along with him. Bruce's first thought on the animation was to recreate the old Fleischer Studios Superman style, but decided against trying to recreate perfection, as he put it, and went with a more classic deco design, due to it being more bright and optimistic, as Bruce put it. It would later be used in most other DCAU shows, opposed to Bruce's dark deco art style he used for Batman the Animated Series. This particular Superman would later go on to appear in Justice League and Justice League Unlimited alongside Batman and many of his rogues gallery, all keeping their canon from their previous shows. Now, as for the '90s show itself, the animation can be a little clunky at times and the action a little slow. The designs of certain characters are a little hit and miss with me as well. Like Metallo's Terminator design looks amazing, but then you have Parasite, who kinda looks like he just walked out of a FNAF game. However, when the animation goes hard, it really goes hard. The longer fights, like Superman's first fight against the robot in the third episode, were a highlight of the entire show.
Shall we go a few rounds without the suit? Too bad.
In the years after the Justice League Unlimited ended, the place had been flooded with superheroes and media. Now they were in everything from movies, mangas, games, and DC in particular found themselves running into some of their old bad habits. Trying to repeat success from the Nolan Batman films, they sought to apply the same characteristics with more of a morally gray and realistic approach to normally bright and optimistic characters like Superman. Not helping, we started to see a number of evil Superman parallels like Homelander, Omni-Man, and evil kid Superman in a movie Brightburn. DC even made an outright tyrant Superman in the Injustice games. Superman himself, or what he represents, seems to again have been taken for granted. That was until My Adventures with Superman debuted on Adult Swim and HBO Max. Co-produced by Josie Campbell, Brendan Clohar, and Jake Watt. Three people that helped create shows like DuckTales 2017 or Rise of the TMT. It brought a more anime art style and focusing on Superman's daily life along with his two closest friends, Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen. The guy is so nice he literally cleans up the damage after each fight. This is far from the neck-snapping Snyder Cut version as you could get. Surprisingly, people like a hopeful, non-murder happy Superman. Who knew? The animation is a bit more consistent, but some of the backgrounds look like they haven't been colored completely a lot of the time. The action is a lot faster paced and the characters are more expressive. Again, though some character designs aren't my favorite here either. A lot of the villains seem to just mix together, or just look too plain. And some of them, I don't even know why they chose to make them look like this. Like Deathstroke's in this, but if you looked at his costume, you'd probably think that was Bloodsport with his face painted orange for some reason. However, the kaiju-sized Parasite is actually pretty cool. On to the shows, let's start with their opening episodes, / origins of the main characters. The '90s Superman opens up with the three-parter, The Last Son of Krypton. In the first episode, we follow Superman's father, Jor-El, as he tries to convince the leaders of the planet Krypton that the planet will soon be destroyed. He wants to evacuate the populace into a dimension called the Phantom Zone, where they keep their criminals to be freed later, by one who used his rocket to flee the planet. However, the Kryptonian supercomputer Brainiac tells the leader Jor-El is wrong, and they are in no danger. Brainiac is actually one of the first changes we see from his comic counterpart, because he is normally an alien called a Kaluan, bent on collecting all knowledge. While he may not be an alien, his motivations are the same here, or at least they will be later on. As Jor-El finds out, Brainiac was lying and planning on escaping the planet by himself, with all Krypton's knowledge and history. As he attempts to stop him, Jor-El is framed and now only has enough time to send his wife and son, Kal-El, the future Superman, to a world where he will be safe, called Earth, although his wife decides to stay behind with him. In the second episode, we see Kal adopted by the nice couple called the Kents, who named him Clark, and we quickly fast forward to his teenage years. He is discussing finding his new powers with his friend Lana Lang and parents after he saves a kid from a burning car crash, explodes, and he walks out without a scratch. Later, the Kents decide to tell him about his origins and show him the rocket he came in, which held a black box that showed him a vision of his birth parents, explaining the destruction of their planet. He doesn't take the news too well, though.
It's not true. I'm not a freak. I'm not. I'm not!
Clark, come back!
However, after a run and a fly, he is apparently over it, as we have another time skip to the city of Mxyzptlk, where people have been seeing a strange man wearing an S on his chest doing good deeds around the city, later dubbed Superman, who has completely realized his full potential as Clark Kent starts his new job at the Daily Planet. There he meets Lois Lane as the two compete to get stories first, eventually leading them to investigate a stolen LexCorp battle mech. Lois goes off on her own to find the story by going onto a boat full of armed terrorists with nobody else. I wonder how this is going to play out.
I can think of some doozies.
I'll bet.
Superman arrives at the rescue as the head of the group, John Corbin, gets in the battle mech, and the two have a drawn-out battle where Superman wins and calls out Lex Luthor, who is behind the whole thing, but can't be arrested due to lack of evidence. Lex is out $1 billion thanks to Supes destroying the suit, and this begins their age-old rivalry, which would continue all the way into Justice League Unlimited.
Say something!
I'll be watching you, Luthor.
Wait! I'm not finished with you!
In My Adventures with Superman, we first see Clark Kent in a flashback as a child trying to get his kite out of the tree. When he sees a car swerve out of control, his powers in super strength, speed, and flight awaken, and he's able to stop the car from crashing. After a flight through the clouds, we jump forward to Clark in his 20s living with his roommate Jimmy Olsen, preparing for their new internship at the Daily Planet. This Clark is more focused on trying to live a normal life with superpowers and is not operating as Superman at this point, but still willing to help cats out of trees, as well as constantly breaking everything around him, by accident. The reason and circumstances of Clark's arrival in the 2023 show is kept vague and is actually one of the overarching mysteries of the show. In the second episode, we get another flashback seeing Clark as a child going to see his old spaceship and getting a holographic version just like in the 90s version. However, when he sees his birth father, he speaks an alien language and this scares the Kents, leaving Clark to bury it until he needs more answers in the current day. Returning to it, he gets the same alien gibberish, but is shown a vision of a war-torn world as two people send their son away on a ship that brought him to Earth. This is also the moment he gets his super suit, resembling the Man of Steel version, but his Earth mother added his classic shorts. Throughout the rest of the show, we learn that most of the events of the season are tied to the day Clark arrived on Earth, dubbed Zero Day. On that day, the Earth was also invaded by machines sporting the Brainiac logo and a flying man resembling Superman before a bright light closes the portal they were using to invade. This leads to the government confiscating the tech from the battlefield and starting the Task Force X program, focused on finding and neutralizing threats to Earth. Some of the tech was stolen by a criminal organization called Intergang and is the starting incident of the first couple of episodes, as Lois Lane wants to investigate the stolen goods that most of the villains of the show would end up using.
Which means thieves with dangerous war machines are loose in our city. People need to know about this. So, ready for me to bust the story wide open?
No, Lois, you're an intern. The only reason I called you in today was to meet them.
Hi.
Although to get Clark and Jimmy to help her investigation, she initially lies to the duo, and Clark calls her out when their boss Perry White texts him and tells him the truth. They do the usual split up temporarily bit, and Lois kinda comes to the realization what she did was probably bad.
Then he says I'm the selfish one. I mean, yes, I lied, but he wouldn't have helped me unless I had. Not like he helped that old lady with the bib, or helped me with Flip, or Or brought everyone donuts. Or I was being selfish.
Am I a bad person?
While Clark is also wondering if he would have helped her if she had asked, as tracking down dangerous weapons and get them off the street is probably a good thing to do.
Clark! Lois was right.
I know, she did lie, but would I have helped her if she told me the truth? I don't think I would. And what does that say about me?
Not that!
After this, Lois and Jimmy find the terrorists by accident, and the terrorists accidentally send robots to destroy them as they try to run away. Having deja vu here for some reason. Clark runs to their rescue in disguise, and Lois and Jimmy help to shut down the few robots as Clark sees more visions from the past after breaking the one before it was able to kill Lois. Clark returns to his civilian attire, Lois apologizes for lying to them, and they were rewarded for finding the bots by not being fired, as well as having their story scooped by the actual news team of the Daily Planet. This sets up the other running story beat throughout the series, that being the Core 3's relationship, which is best described as lawful, neutral, and chaotic good. These episodes do a great job of establishing the characters and plots going forward. In My Adventures of Superman, we had more of an overarching narrative, so we got a clearer path for the questions that were set up in the first episodes. Like the previously mentioned origin that makes the key focus of the story, and also ties into all the villains' motivations or powers. That's on top of the more personal drama of the main cast, like Clark and Lois' romantic relationship, and Clark as Superman wanting to just use the powers he was always self-conscious about for good, as well as discovering new ones as he starts tracking down the stolen tech the government was using. Everything in the story ties together and is built up and pays off by the end. While Superman the Animated Series isn't as focused on tying everything together, Superman here gets his powers and decides to use them for good right away. Already seems to be a capable fighter, as well as having control over all his normal powers. So we just have episodic stories of him fighting new threats. The 90s show also might not have as much serialization as My Adventures with Superman. It does have a lot more continuity than his predecessor Batman the Animated Series did. For example, the Joker in Batman the Animated Series was constantly appearing at random. Sometimes he would be in jail, other times he would be out with no explanation as to how he got out of prison. Even after episodes seemed to show his death, he would just be onto another scheme like nothing had happened. In Superman the Animated Series, things are a lot more planned out, with longer form personal stories with random ones in between. When Corbin, the terrorist that fought Superman in the mech suit in the 3rd episode, was taken away, we still find him in prison in the 7th episode. After finding out that he has a terminal illness, he agrees to let Lex Luthor free him to help take down Superman. Corbin gets a new robot body, powered by kryptonite, which Lex discovered in episode 5, turning him into the supervillain Metallo. Even when we see him again in Season 2, he is coming off the results of the last fight with Superman, which saw him sink to the bottom of the ocean, losing what was left of his skin and memory. Now, this is a more common way shows in the 90s, like the 90s Spider-Man and Gargoyles, used to do. Although it did start to build longer planned out stories in the background, like Darkseid's coming arrival in the next season. Onto the characters. The characters in both find ways to change certain aspects around said characters, while maintaining what keeps them true to their original character. Take the Superman from the 90s. He is already a fully realized character, and the 2023 version is just starting out, just now trying to learn his own power set. However, both keep to the fundamental core of Superman, which is just a guy who tries to always do the right thing. Both Supermen always try to help people, even their villains. In the 90s, Superman goes out of his way to try to talk down super threats like Parasite and Lobo first before punching them.
It's as if I've turned into some kind of monster. Can you help me?
Let me take you back to Star. Maybe Professor Hamilton can treat you.
Okay, Superman. Just don't hurt me.
I won't. Hang on.
He even tried to help Corbin by revealing Lex was, of course, using him and even poisoned him with a virus so he would agree to have his brain put in the Metallo robot body, willingly. Or maybe he was just punishing him for failing. That's personally what I like to think he did, because Lex is kind of a prick. We see this helping nature in the 2023 version as well. One of the first acts we get to see of the 2023 version is him helping a random cat stuck in a tree, and he nearly drives himself crazy helping everyone with their problems when he discovers his super hearing, to the point he hasn't slept in days.
I can hear everyone. And Jimmy? They have problems.
You been sleeping much, buddy?
Not for a few days.
That unabashed kindness and caring for people is the core component of Superman. It's the reason people see him as an icon and the truest definition of a hero. It's not because he's this super powerful godlike figure like shown in well, pretty much every movie in the last couple of decades, it's because he's just a very nice man who happens to have these godlike powers. In a way, he's almost the most human version of the superheroes in DC. This is a great foil to villains like Lex Luthor and Darkseid, who are constantly trying to use their power and influence for evil.
I'm not here to scare anyone. In fact, I've always tried to help people whenever possible.
You sound too good to be true. What's your secret?
Please, this man needs your help.
You ruined me. What's your angle? What's in this for you?
Dr. Ivo, look around you. Is it that hard to believe that some people just want to help?
Now, the Lois Lanes are very similar. The original character of Lois Lane has always been reckless in her pursuit of the story, to the point where she would constantly put herself in danger by jumping into robots, and have the stones to say this to the madman that made it and was threatening to kill her.
Jewels. What have you done with the jewels?
You'll read about it in tomorrow's paper.
That's Lois Lane in a nutshell. She's practically a shonen protagonist before they were even a thing. Both these Loises fit that description, but the 2023 one isn't the world-famous reporter yet. She is only an intern, mostly because of the recklessness. Like lying to Jimmy and Clark, or bull-rushing wealthy people at the Ivo Industries tech demo, even though she was only supposed to do a soft interview with Ivo himself. She often gets punished for this by having her stories given away to the other reporters. However, she doesn't really get upset about it though, and even seems to take it as a chance to overachieve, and that is surprisingly endearing. Kind of like an underdog that just doesn't know when to give up. She's not mad or spiteful at Perry or the other news team, she just wants to do better and get recognition for her good deeds. Which can also lead her to tunnel blindness. Her relationship with Clark is also a highlight of the series. It's also a little funny, though, how she was originally attracted to Clark first and not Superman. I don't think I've ever seen that before. After she discovers Clark's secret identity, thanks to Clark leaving behind evidence and just not generally being good at hiding it. I mean, look at this.
I wanted to
All
ask...
units, reports of a runaway bus on Main Street.
I forgot all about my bagel in the kitchen. I'll be right back.
All units, disregard. Superman, stop the bus.
Where were we?
All units, there's a mugging on 47th.
Cream cheese!
Disregard previous request. Superman has it under control.
When she starts to see it, she is actually worried for Clark, and worried about why he hides it from her, thinking Clark is only a cover for Superman as well as their relationship. Kinda like a certain Cape Crusader in the 90s.
You've got to have a little faith, Sharon. Karen, you're not going to help me, are you?
Heck, this thing even happened to the 90s Lois Lane. And yes, it was also Batman that did it.
How could you have lied to me like that?
No, I never actually said I wasn't Batman. Ow!
Still a piece of garbage.
After Lois sees Clark wounded from his most recent battle with Deathstroke, followed by yet another terrible lie to explain why he's got knife wounds on his neck, she decides to force his hand by pulling the Superman 2, and forces him to reveal his identity, which then leads to the two arguing. Clark is rightly skeptical of Lois though, as she did say she wanted to post all of Superman's secrets in the first episode. This leads to a confrontation that resembles the conversation they had in the first episode, but now the two seem to have switched sides.
You lied to me, Superman! I mean, technically, yes, but you wouldn't have helped me if I told the truth. I would never do that to you.
Lois, you lied. I didn't lie to you, I just didn't tell you everything.
A secret is another type of lie!
Lois, you have no idea what's going on in this city right now. You didn't give us a chance.
Because this was too important. The people of Metropolis need to know what's happening in their city, and...
This isn't about the city, Lois, it's about you. I trusted you, and you used me, and Jimmy, just so you could get your story.
You kept this from me, and I'm your... I don't know what we were going to be, but that's all over now. Come on, Clark. We're a team.
We're not a team. We're just two dummies who listened to you because we didn't know any better. Now we do.
Normally in fiction, this would lead to a drawn-out, angsty arc that could easily be fixed with a simple talk, but doesn't actually happen, as drama and ship-teasing is what sells the most in shows. Everything from anime to sitcoms do this. Drives me nuts. Luckily, the show blows past that trope, fixing it in the very next episode with a simple talk.
When is a good time for the truth with you?
Lois, I've told you more about myself than I've ever told anyone. You already know I'm Superman. What else do you need to know?
Did you lie about your feelings for me? Everything you said to me, what? Was it all just a cover for you?
Am I a bad person?
Getting straight into them just being a cute couple right after. With none of the usual hang-ups you would expect.
You're the only Lois for me.
I'm annoying.
You're dedicated. I'm weird.
You're amazing. I love going on adventures with you, Clark.
I love your brilliance.
I love your kindness.
I love...
Kiss each other!
The 90s Lois Lane, though, I kinda have a problem with. It's not that she's bad or anything, she has a great chemistry with Clark and Superman, and is a very confident, take-no-nonsense style of character that I usually love more. But she just isn't utilized to her fullest in this season. Episode 5 is probably her best episode, as she is moving the plot by investigating kryptonite and even helps save Superman in it. Most of the time, though, she's more of a plot device, or has certain scenes just repeated. You know, like her just walking onto a boat filled with terrorists, only to be captured in about 3 minutes. Or like the scene in the 7th episode where Mxyzptlk and Superman are fighting through buildings, and yet Lois Lane just happens to appear to help Superman, but then gets quickly assaulted by Mxyzptlk, giving Superman enough time to get back in the fight. Nothing bad is with this scene on its own, but literally the same thing happens again in episode 9. Superman is now fighting Lobo, and they're flying through the city crashing through buildings, and as soon as they land and Lobo starts to get the upper hand, Lois comes out of nowhere with a metal pipe and tries to take on Lobo, a guy she just saw fighting Superman. He again now tries to sexually assault her, which again gives Superman enough time to then punch Lobo into the air. Now I can suspend my disbelief for once or twice, this is a story of fiction about superheroes after all, but if you're going to do the same thing twice, nearly back to back, and you're not the Power Rangers, I'm going to be less lenient. And besides this, in the majority of the episodes in Season 1, Lois is more of a background character. Like, yeah, she's there, she has lines, but she doesn't really contribute to most of the stories overall. It's even more noticeable compared to the second season in episodes like The Late Mr. Kent, where Lois tries to find Clark Kent's killer, or Brave New Metropolis, where she takes on the entire city under Lex Luthor's control in an alternate dimension. Lois is definitely a great character in the 90s series, but she just kinda comes up short in Season 1. Jimmy in the 90s show got it even worse, as I don't even really know if you can consider him a third wheel. He's kinda like a little brother background type of sidekick character, but doesn't really do a whole lot for most of the show. He helps Superman once against the Parasite, but doesn't really contribute much else for the whole season. And unlike Lois, he doesn't really get much better in the next season either. I think his best episode might be when Mxyzptlk built him a robot girlfriend, and must be rescued more than usual in Superman's pal. Because I swear I can't really remember much else of what he's done in the entire show. Now, the My Adventures with Superman's Jimmy does earn the title of Superman's best friend, as the two are roommates that have known each other since college, and actually already start out as friends. At first, it looks like Jimmy is just another third wheel, there for mostly comic relief and unaware of the larger story like Superman's secret identity, or supervillains, etc. He's just kind of around. That quickly gets turned on its head though, as right after the episode where Lois figures out Clark is Superman, Jimmy lets it slip that he's known the whole time.
Jimmy, you deserve to know. I am...
Clark, I know you're Superman. This is not a big reveal.
Wait, what? You know? Since when?
We've been roommates since freshman year. The day I met you, you ripped the handle off of the door, then tried to play it like the screws had just come loose.
I mean, it could have been the screws.
The handle was ripped in half!
Now, this is one of those nice little twists, because this puts every word Jimmy said in the previous episode in a whole new perspective. As now we can see he's trying to hint to Clark that he knew his secret, just like Lois had tried to do, cover for Clark when Lois was getting too close, or just busting his balls like a true best friend would.
I can't believe our alarm clock exploded again. Why do you think that keeps happening?
So hey, our first day at the Daily Planet.
For instance, on August 3rd he said he was going to get a bagel, but he was gone for 20 minutes and then he came back without a bagel. Also, have you noticed how often he steps out for bagels?
Is this hungry, Lois Colleen? Do you need a bagel?
This was your plan the whole time? To find trouble, then ambush Superman when he flies in?
I mean, it worked when we did it with Livewire.
You did that on purpose?
See, that is peak friendship right there. Jimmy also is the most level-headed of the trio, as when the other two start to keep secrets from each other again for what they thought was best for each other, it was Jimmy that put his foot down and had them talk it out. There are other characters in both shows, but they don't really have counterparts in the shows as of right now. In the 23 show, the biggest surprise character was probably Mr. Mala and the Brain, two typically villain characters that many may remember from the 2003 Titans show. Here they aren't really evil, but just want to be left alone, and just like the comics, they are a couple. There's also Vicky Vale, Lois Lane's idol, but also a dark mirror to her, as she is pretty much Lois with no morals as she lies to make a smear piece against Superman just for a promotion at her job. Then there's the other co-workers, Kat, Ronnie Ann, and Steve, who are somewhat of a rivalry with the three main trio as news reporters, with Steve surprisingly being the one most fleshed out by talking to Jimmy. The others unfortunately don't get that many lines. You also have their boss, Mr. White, but again doesn't really do much throughout the show. Now, the 90s had characters that did get a huge amount of focus in either 1 or 2 episodes, like Dan Turpin, a gruff officer not afraid to get his hands dirty, modeled after the comics legend Jack Kirby, and his partner, the more level-headed Maggie Sawyer, who even helped Superman track down a bomb planted by a mad genius in the city in the last episode of Season 1. Oh, and then there's Lana Lang, Clark's high school sweetheart, who reappears as a famous fashion designer dating Lex Luthor in the episode My Girl. She actually quickly figures out Clark was Superman to his surprise for some reason.
I still don't see how you knew.
Oh, come on, Clark.
Dude, you told her in episode 2 you had powers. How is she not supposed to put 2 and 2 together?
And I could see things too, like in the gym. Miss Stevenson's inside, putting up decorations for the dance. Somebody should be holding that ladder.
You're saying you can see through walls?
Like, how is it you two are so surprised people know your secret identity when you're this bad at hiding it? Lana wants to help Clark by giving him information on Lex, even tries to hit him up too. This also has to have one of the funniest accidental jokes of all time that has only gotten better / sadder with time depending on how you see it.
I could be your trusty sidekick, your Dr. Watson, your Batgirl.
Definitely no.
Okay, see, you knew it was creepy back then, but you still try to do it again 20 years later for some reason. Why? Oh, and then there's Lobo, who can best be described as the best parts of the 90s.
I've never seen a creature like this.
I love you too.
He was originally a villain set to capture Superman, but after being double-crossed, he teams up with the Man of Steel to escape. The first of many team-ups with other DC characters, which you see a lot more of in Season 2. Next up is the villains, who seem to have the biggest differences between both shows. The main antagonist for Season 1 of the 90s series is of course Lex Luthor, one of Superman's oldest arch-enemies. Now he's the perfect foil for Superman, as he is just a normal man with ridiculous wealth, most of which he made unlawfully, and uses to wreak havoc all for the sake of his ego. Just look at this conversation between them in their first face-to-face meeting.
I've often thought, why limit myself to just one city? A being with your abilities could be very useful to me on a, shall we say, global scale. Why don't you float on in and we'll discuss it?
All that bluster and smugness being said to a man that tore his war machine apart while Superman just looks unimpressed floating above him. At that point, Lex just makes it his whole life missions to ruin Superman's. He has either directly created supervillains like Mxyzptlk or indirectly like the criminals he sells weapons to. He's definitely a little bit more cartoony in this season and really isn't hitting his Justice League Ultimate stride yet.
You'll all be my lieutenants in the new order. Of course, if you don't like those terms, you'd better stop me now while you still have a chance. But you'd also better remember what happened to poor Goldface. I'm already more powerful than all of you put together.
That said, he's cartoonishly evil in the best way. Who else would try to kill you with a robot T-Rex just because he can have a robot T-Rex made? Now, in My Adventures with Superman, Lex doesn't even show up, at least as Lex Luthor, as some people, including me, do suspect Ivo's assistant Alex is actually Alexander Luthor, which is Lex's full name. Instead, the overall antagonist of the season is Task Force X, led by the General, Sam Lane. And yes, he does have the last name as Lois. What a coincidence, huh? The task force is also led by Amanda Waller, and by their side is their super soldier Slade Wilson. It was their weapons they modified from the invasion 20 years ago during Zero Day that were stolen in the first episode and giving to random criminals, turning them into superpowered villains. They spend most of the time tracking down their hardware and recruiting the criminals by including Livewire, the person that stole the weapons from them, and forcing them into their task force, which quickly turns its attention to Superman right near the ending of the season. Of course, this isn't without reason though, as we learn Amanda and Sam's backstory of being attacked by the invading alien force on Zero Day. So they aren't necessarily just outright evil as say Lex was in the original show, as Amanda and Sam butt heads on how they operate constantly, with Waller being more get the job done by any means necessary, while Sam isn't really willing to endanger civilians. So both of them are operating with a similar moral code, which isn't just screw with him because, but because they think he's a threat.
I made the hard calls so that when your people came back to finish what they started, we would be ready. And then you showed up, passing yourself off as a hero, when we both know what you are. A weapon! So you are going to tell me everything you know. Who are you? And why are you on Earth?
I don't know. I always thought that...
Am I a bad person?
It does come ahead in the last couple episodes where Waller orchestrates a breakout of the villains to take over Task Force for herself by pinning all the blame for the breakout on Sam. There are a few other villains that aren't really related to Lex though, like Rudy, aka the Parasite. He was just a small-time thief that originally didn't want to harm others but quickly became corrupted when he gets a taste of Superman's powers and it goes straight to his head. Now, Parasite in the newer show had something similar going on, except for pretty much the entire background. Where Rudy was a down-his-luck janitor, this Parasite was a tech billionaire named Ivo, who was normally the guy known for making the Amazo android in the comics and even the Justice League show, but in this one he takes a more on-hands approach as he literally becomes the new Parasite. And kinda like Rudy, he becomes more unhinged when he puts on his armor, becoming power-hungry in a very literal sense, as well as just flying into rages. The two also are probably some of the scariest villains of the show too, but in different ways. In the 90s show, Rudy becomes a real threat by attacking Superman in his home thanks to stealing his memories, along with his power, and plans to keep him prisoner so he can keep stealing his powers as they wear off over time. Whereas in the 2023 show, he keeps absorbing power to transform into a bigger kaiju-sized monster. And again, I really like this design, especially compared to the 90s one, which is just, again, kind of a purple guy. Like, I can't even tell if that's a mouth. Ooh, another villain in the 90s show that has nothing to do with Lex would of course be Lobo, who can go toe-to-toe with Superman and is one of the few beings that can match him in strength. Brainiac is also a legitimate threat to the 90s Superman, even giving him a backhand. Brainiac also had a nice personal connection to Superman, as he was the one who doomed his home planet. Unfortunately, none of the other villains in My Adventures with Superman really come off as a threat to Superman. Most are just goofy small-town crooks like Rudy without really the danger he brings. In fact, you could really just switch them out with any other hero or villain, and you probably wouldn't even notice. Actually, perfect example. You see this character here with the red hair and the fire powers? Now, I originally thought that this was Volcana, another fire-themed villain that normally fights Superman. But as it turns out, this is Heatwave, who is normally a Flash villain. And the only reason I know that is because they say their name is Heatwave. They have no characteristics or similarities to the comics version, other than both are fire-based villains. Same as Volcana. It really doesn't matter who that person is. They're just there to build up Task Force X. But like I said, there are a couple of standouts like Parasite, and of course, how do you say this name?
I'm Mr. Mxyzptlk.
Read after me, bright boy. It's Mix. Yes. Spit. Lick.
Yeah, that guy, who shows up in the 7th episode. Normally is an insanely powerful being, like in the 90s show, who was voiced by Gilbert Gottfried. However, that version was mostly there for comedy's sake.
You make me say, spell, or otherwise reveal my name backwards, and I'll split until our dimensions come into alignment again.
I can't even say your name forward. How am I supposed to say it backward?
No, dope! You don't have to say it backward. You have to get me to say it.
Say what?
Kill Tipsy Jim! Gosh, you're thick! Now for the last time! Ah, nuts.
Now, the 2023 version wasn't nearly as powerful, but did manage to cause way more chaos by manipulating the character flaws of the trio, like Clark's obvious naivety.
Normal? You are never going to be normal. I have seen countless yous, and it is your fate to always be different and weird and alone. And you may be stronger than me, but can you stop me? I think...
You're not okay.
But strong enough for one last trick.
No.
Or Lois's need for recognition.
You met a legion of yourself, and the first thing you did was suspect them of lying? Lois Prime would have loved you.
And why is that?
Because she didn't trust anyone either! Which is why she kept a secret backup master key. And now I know which Lois you are! You're the fun one!
Yeah, just a couple words, and he has both of them in the palm of his hand. They may do something more in Season 2 with the escaped Task Force X members. Maybe they'll form their own group, kind of like the Flash's Rogues, but for Superman. That way, it would at least make sense as to why Heatwave is there, as well as the fact that Livewire has absorbed the powers of her suit and no longer needs it, which is actually a thing that did happen to the Rogues in the comic books. At least that's what I hope they're doing with these characters, because otherwise, if they're just going to have them do random stuff again, I'm not sure what the point of even having villains in the show was. And that was the gist of each show. I did leave out some details, as I don't want to give everything of the shows away, and really do recommend you go watch them for yourselves. If nothing else, to see why a kind Superman can be just, if not more, endearing than the drama-riddled edgelords. I have high hopes for My Adventures with Superman Season 2, and can't wait to talk about Season 2 of the 90s show, as it has some of the best episodes in the entire show's run, along with a few more mind-boggling flaws. Until then, what do you think about each show, and what do you think I should have talked about more? Until then, thanks for showing up, and here's some crack.
Aha! Finally! A worthy opponent! Our battle will be legendary!
Your constant harassment of the female gender makes me sick.
And I don't even meet the dress code anymore.
That we can fix. Take it off.
I need an adult.
I am an adult.
Who are you? Your new lord and master. You may call me Darkseid.
That is the sound of a man who fucks.
Father and I want to talk. Have you been doing drugs or having sex? No? I told you we were raising a pussy.
I'm glad you're all here. You can bear witness that I've been on your side all along.
Save it, Luthor.
How do you think they got here? I had Superman stop by on the way over. They had a nice long talk.
So, I thought that if I waited, you would tell me when you were ready.
You've known this whole time? Why didn't you tell me?
Hold up! You told Lois before you told me, your best friend?
Fuck this shit, I'm out. Fuck this shit, I'm out.
No thanks.
Don't mind me, I'ma just grab my stuff and leave.